The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents EPIC Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host,
Laurel Tague. Welcome everybody out there tonight to the EPIC Voyages Radio Show. You're listening to www.inceptionradionetwork.com. Our guest tonight is Tom T. Moore, and I am the host. It's my pleasure to be the host on the show tonight. I'm Laurel Tague, and we are going to be talking about Tom's latest book. He has two others already out there. Before I get into the conversation, though, I want to give you all some information. First of all, you might want to check out his website while we're talking, because several of the things he's talking about, you might be able to find things there that would fill in some of the images for you, and that is thegentlewaybook.com. No spaces, thegentlewaybook.com. Tom has a really excellent website in that you can search all the way back through, I believe, 2007, his newsletters, all kinds of topics, and also articles. You can find sample chapters of his books, the two previous ones, which were called The Gentle Way, a self-help guide for those who believe in angels, and The Gentle Way 2, Benevolent Outcomes, the story continues, and this third book that I believe is scheduled to be formally released in about 2 weeks from now, First Contact, Conversations with an E.T. You need to know a little bit more about Tom and the way he does his work, but let me give you a little bit of an introduction before we go there. Tom has been an author and a speaker for literally 30 years. He has traveled extensively. He and his wife have owned and operated an international wholesale tour company, selling tours through 3,000 travel agents nationwide. And for the last 25 years, he's actually been the president and CEO of his own international motion picture and TV program distribution business. So he has an awful lot of knowledge and skills behind the camera. And through his writing, now he's on the other side of it as well. For, I would say, Tom, 35 years at least, you've had firsthand experience with daily meditation. Some real interesting stories, which I think he's going to share tonight to tell you how he got started and how he plies his craft. About the book, let me give you just a couple of details before we go to the conversation. The First Contact book is actually a compilation of Tom's conversations with Antura, who is an extraterrestrial from the Sirius B Star group, and he is a member of Tom's soul group. Now, Tom's going to explain all of this tonight while he's with us. Antura is actually an amphibian being who's living on a water planet. So, let's see, I guess from that point, Tom, what I would like to ask you, just to introduce yourself a little bit, say a little bit about how you got into this practice of yours of receiving information, and how does it work?
Okay. It's actually telepathic in nature. What I do, and hello everybody all over the world, wherever you're listening to us tonight or today, and it's telepathic in nature. I put myself into an altered state, and I only go into a light alpha state, because if you go too deep into a theta state, you're too deep in order to communicate, whether it be with spirit, which is how I started, or later when my own guardian angel introduced me to this member of my soul group or cluster, as he calls it, and he introduced me to Antura. And slowly but surely, I was given more and more information as to why the introduction was made.
Well, Tom, share with everyone your experience that convinced you that you needed to stick with this practice. You mentioned it in the beginning of your book, how you had the premonition when you were working with the travel tours involving, I think it was Indonesia, was it, or the Philippines? Manila?
Philippines? Oh, that's right. I had started recording my dreams, and I have found that's a real good way for people to get used to sort of dragging these things out of your subconscious, because when you're awakening from sleep, you go through this alpha state, and at that point you can still remember your dreams. And I had started writing them down in 1979 every day, and a couple of weeks after I began writing them down, I had this very vivid dream of an explosion with a woman and some men involved. It was so vivid that we were supposed to be going to a World Congress of Travel Agents in Manila. We canceled the Manila portion and added days on to Hong Kong and Taiwan. And then on the first day of the Congress, terrorists blew up a bomb in the front of the Congressional Hall, injuring 10 people, which is where I like to sit, towards the front. And after that, we learned that it was a woman who worked in the Philippines Trade Office in Los Angeles, and 4 men were arrested for the bombing. And so I decided at that point that I would record my dreams the rest of my life. And I have had other prophetic dreams along the way, such as 9/11, the Delta crash in the 80s at DFW, the space shuttle exploding on takeoff from Florida, and so on. So you really are given many different messages, not only for mass events, but also for your own life, warnings sometimes, and other times to let you know that something really, really good is about to happen to you.
So from what you're describing, it sounds like the more you practice and you become comfortable with it and you become committed to a schedule so that it becomes a discipline, the better you get?
Yes. That's exactly. Practice. Whoops, sorry. When I was had started to communicate with spirit, I will just say, my reception was only like 15 to 30%, and so every month I'd be asking, well, is my reception improving? And I kept being told, practice. I was told that so many times I finally stopped asking. But I do know that my reception is now somewhere in the 80 to 90% range, sometimes absolutely perfect. But as Theo, my guardian angel, says, no one doing this work is perfect. So.
Well, we were having that same conversation in the chat room a little earlier tonight about no one's perfect. Only a fool would think that he is. Right. But it's very impressive, Tom. Again, I want to make sure I get some information out there early for those of you who would like to. Since this is a live show, you could go to his website, thegentlewaybook.com. And there is a link at the top of his website that says sample chapters. And you will actually find all 3 of his books. And the one that we're talking about tonight is called First Contact. And I also want to tell everyone, Tom, the ebook has been out for a couple of weeks. Is that right? And the hard copy you can pre-order right now on Amazon.com. And what I'd like to recommend to people is if you do go to Amazon.com and search for his book, First Contact by Tom T. as in Tom Moore, Moore, then you can actually click on the picture of the book and have the opportunity to get an expanded view inside the book. I would recommend that you take a look at the table of contents because it's very detailed. And actually, Tom, I think it's one of the best examples of giving someone an idea of what you're covering in the book that I've ever seen before. It's not just chapter titles.
Exactly. It's subgroups or subtitles in the chapter so that you really have a really good idea of what's in the chapter.
Mm-hmm. And it's extremely informative. The book is pre-ordered right now, right? And I think it's coming out in about another week or so, or 2 weeks?
June 26th. And what I'm finding, just for those that have an interest in possibly purchasing the book, I have found that Amazon, as they started out with the price at $10.15, which was like 30 or 35% off the price for pre-orders. Now I found just today they've raised it to $11.57. And I can almost guarantee everyone, because I saw this on my other two books, that they will raise it to full retail after the pre-order period is over. Because they've got these algorithms and all that tell them if a lot of people are ordering, why give it away? We'll make them pay more.
Mm-hmm. So the early birds not only get the worm, but they get it a little cheaper than the late worms, right?
Exactly.
Okay, let's talk about the book, Tom.
Sure.
What I found, like I said, you should really look at the table of contents. But what I thought was so interesting, the first couple or three chapters, Tom talks about Antura, this ET from the Sirius B, I guess, solar system.
Yes.
But what I thought was, to me personally, even more interesting, the rest of the book. I have done so much reading of the Sitchin books and other things about the Nephilim, and Tom really touches on all of that in one way or another in this book. And I think anyone who's done very much reading about where did we come from, why are we here, are we just evolved from amoebas and monkeys and things like that, I think you'll find what Tom has to say in his book really, really interesting because it connects a lot of that alternative resource reading that I'm talking about. It connects it all together and it makes it a really nice, explainable point of view. So, Tom, talking about the Earth experiment,